All right, peeps, we're live. We are live with the Q&A. I'm going to go and drop this on the timeline real quick, real quick, real quick, real quick. All right. So apologize. These questions have been a long time coming. You guys can probably still hear that my voice isn't back to normal. It's a little bit raspy, a little hollow. I've had laryngitis, so we're about a week behind with the Q&A. But, life happens, guys. Life happens. And you just got to manage. You just got to manage with it. All right. Let's get through them. So, question number 1. Love last night's stream, man. Thanks for answering my sexual trauma question in depth. Are you down to bring the nuance up a notch for the next stream with a follow-up question? Basically, how dirty can you go in a committed relationship without feeding the sexual trauma, degeneracy parasite too much? Where does this intersect with integrating her whore side in the relationship? I think I kind of know intuitively, but would love it if you would crystallize it all Pat Stedman style. And if you need context, I am asking as a guy that has sexual trauma due to being exposed to porn at a young age and likes to turn girls into my little slut. No idea if this is healthy in a serious and committed relationship. All right, great question. Very sophisticated question. And I'm going to approach it from more this direction. There isn't a right or wrong answer to this. It's important for parties. Like, sexual energy is not, it's not all clean, right? It's not all a clean thing. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that can trigger sexual energy that don't even necessarily come from serious trauma. It's a you could argue it's a very high voltage, and you could argue it's a volatile force. The purpose of a relationship is to contain it and to utilize it in a healthy way. There isn't Obviously there's a slippery slope. So, you know, you could say that you get into sexual openness and you share fantasies, and then the fantasies build, and then you decide you want to explore them in reality, and then before you know it, you're doing all sorts of really degenerate stuff, and now you're sleeping with other people, and it's group sex and orgies and stuff like that. And then you're clearly off point at that point. So the question is, where's the line? In a lot of religious traditions, you were not even able to do anything besides for regular sex. In some cultures, you can only do missionary sex. So sex was not simply just constrained in a marriage, but even the type of sex was constrained in a marriage. Because if you were to do it in a different way, it would indicate a change in the dynamics. Like, a woman on top would be a woman in a dominant position, so you couldn't do that. You could only do missionary. So my point in saying this is that you can really take this to a full extreme. Like, there are some trad religious groups that only believe in sex for procreation. But most Christians will dispute that. Most Christians will say, wait a minute, you know, you're supposed to enjoy sex in a marriage, and as long as it's in the marriage, it's fine. It doesn't mean that, okay, your wife's pregnant, now you don't have sex with her for another 10 months. So there's a lot of variation, a lot of varied beliefs about this and how you're supposed to proceed with it. My personal opinion is that you do need to you don't want to abandon a sexual circuit. There's two primary sexual circuits. There's the cortisol excitement anxiety circuit, and then there's the connected you know infatuation um obsession circuit, right? And they're two completely different things. One is what we consider to be some of the more dark and can verge on kinky, and a lot of trauma comes from it. And the other one is, we call a lot more pure often, a lot more, you just want that person. You can't get enough of that person. You want to connect with them, right? It's fucking versus making love. My perspective is that in a relationship, you need to leverage both circuits. Because if you only go for the connected circuit and you just say, hey, we just want to focus on the connected one, we don't want to deal with the other one, that leaves the other one open to being captured, right? By other people, by other events. And it leads to, I think, on a macro level, a separation within the relationship, because then we're looking at the woman only as the Madonna, not the whore, right? We can't allow her to express. It actually indicates a decrease in openness, because you're trying to say, well, we don't want to talk about that stuff. We don't want to have that stuff shared or explore it because it's bad, right? I think it's important to be able to share this stuff, even if you don't go ahead and do it. I think it's important to be able to share some of the fantasies, some of the desires and preferences, because you don't want to keep it from your partner. And I think within a lot of the the range, there's a lot of stuff that you can do as a couple that I personally think is appropriate and isn't going to go too far. Like, I don't personally see the problem with head, right? I don't personally see the problem with that. There's a lot of religious groups that consider it a main issue. I don't see that. SW, hey, I appreciate the kind words in the chat. I appreciate that. So I think it's good to have that kind of openness. But here's the thing. Now let's go to the flip side. You don't want to only if your sex life isn't good, though. Part of the reason your sex life may not be good is because you're, you know, there hasn't been enough sexual exploration within the relationship, enough openness of this buried stuff. But in all honesty, a lot of the problem is very well may be that you guys just aren't connecting. You guys aren't taking time together to really, be vibe and to be intimate. These two circuits actually feed on each other, because if you get connected to the other person, then you feel like maybe more open to share some of the darker things. And if you share some of the darker things, then maybe you feel more intimate and connected to the other person. So you see, I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. But if your focus is just doing really kinky shit and degrading stuff, then you're on a highway to hell. That's lust. It's not love. You're not you're not being able to constrain some of that lustful urge in something more committed when you're doing super degrading shit to each other, and you're just amplifying it and going further and further and further. Similarly, though, if you don't allow any kind of exploration of that side, then you you leave a lot on the table in terms of the connection within the relationship, and then you tend to leads to some level of compartmentalization. So I think the summation is don't be afraid to explore your your kinks or your you know things that you prefer to spice things up a little bit. But just keep in mind where the lines are for yourself, and be aware that if you overemphasize the profane, then things can become super degenerate fast. But if you ignore it altogether, well, it's there, right? So, like, I guess the way to look at it is don't ignore what's there. It very well may be that by even acknowledging it, a lot of this stuff is able to decline in terms of its importance. So, yeah, I got to get some honey. My throat's, as you can tell, it's already getting run down, but I do want to go through this stuff. All right, let's see here. Four more. How to approach a younger girl from jujutsu class. I'm new, 1 month of the class, so it's hard to be alone with her to ask questions. We had short eye contact, but that's all. I don't know if she's even single or not. I have no info at all. Should I wait until I know more about her, or yeah, you should wait till you know more about her. I like to call when you're in a class with a girl. I like to say you have operational flexibility. You don't have to make fast or aggressive moves, and actually, you're usually not served by it because it can create awkward dynamic. Um, if you meet a girl on a street or in a venue, you have to make a move then because you're not going to see her again. If you're going to see her every week, you can slowly build up the attraction and allow things to develop much more naturally, so to speak. So I would chat with her more, more than just the eye contact, and say, hey, I think I saw you last class, right? You were here last class, and then ask her out. You just start doing this. That's how I would approach it, and try to time it so that you can walk. Like, you guys leave class together, you can maybe walk with her for a little bit if you guys are going in the same direction, and you have an opportunity to flirt. And then after a few classes, you can then ask her out, get her number. You can certainly do it at the end of the class. SW, to tracking back to the last question. The problem in society is pushing the boundary of what is kinky or conversely normal all the time. 100%. And this is one of the difficult things with it, is that you you can't let me put it this way. A lot of this stuff is actually a matter of your own relationship to lust, and your own relationship to kinky sex, right? Do you want to keep expanding things? How far do you want to keep expanding things? That's really like an independent choice you have to make. How much you want to give into, how much you want to try to harness it. The thing is, everything can be alchemized. Greed, for instance, is not a good thing. But if you have an inclination towards making money, you can use that as fuel. And if you harness it correctly, you can do a lot of good in the world. It's the same thing with lust. You can harness it for greater connection. But remember, at the end of the day, lust is lust. And if you try to go further and further into it, you're more likely to lose yourself. You can harness your desire to make money into developing a war chest that you can start to impact and change the world. But if you let that greed get out of control, then you're just focused on making money. It's the same thing with sex. Same thing with lust. And I think you have to be very, very careful with it. But at the same time, you know, if you if you have I'll just use a basic one. You have a schoolgirl, if you find the whole schoolgirl look kind of hot, turns you on, is it bad for you to have your girl, wear a short skirt and, thigh highs? Is that is that a bad thing for the relationship? No, I don't think it's a bad thing for the relationship. Um, how is that going to mess things up? It's going to give pleasure to you, and so then you'll enjoy it, you'll get excited by it, and then you can be more connected to her. Now, the flip side is that what you could do is then you could start to really, rather than just have it like turn you on, you could let it get into extremes, and so then you start to really control more and more of the fantasy, and that's really a problem. Then you're really going down too far with lust. So it is, I mean, if you have the impulse though, I do think that you need to learn, if the impulse is there, you need to learn how to constrain it. And I think that's ultimately the purpose of marriage, is to constrain it. Believe it or not, not everybody has real lust issues. A lot of guys do, a lot of women do too, but not everybody. And I think that, marriage is or, really committed relationship. That's the place for you to harness that energy and not let it drive you into the abyss. So, because otherwise you're just going to be seeing like prostitutes and stuff. All right. Oh my God, my throat is so dry. Well, I haven't had an issue as he has with, um, I don't understand this. Hold on. My wife definitely recently started the work for me mindset. She doesn't even say I love you anymore. And when I say it, I get a mumbled answer back. So naturally, I stopped saying it. It all started a few weeks ago when I started taking more time for myself, stopped going to the in laws with her and our son every Sunday, told her I want more time for myself and to work on my and our future, literally tackling her anxiety. She is the anxious type, and telling her I'm a hustle. Her first reaction was thinking that I cheat. She even checks the couch for marks every time she comes home. Alarm bells are probably already ringing in your mind. I am not all afraid of divorce, but honestly, I would feel bad for my son. Still, I'm not going to be the guy who constantly pushes and she does nothing. I spent years now developing myself, solving my issues, but she is reluctant to do anything in that regard. She lives in her solipsism. That way is the correct way. That her way is the correct way. So my question is, can I really help her solve her issues so this marriage can be turned around, or am I throwing pearls before swine and wasting my time? I'm really glad you wrote in, man. Look, you have the right intent. You're doing the right thing. And actually, before I go into this, Vic, it's good to see you, man. R.I.P. Kevin Samuels, indeed. Kevin Samuels, man. Does anyone know how he died? Anyway, if you know how he died, drop it in the comments. He's he's he was certainly very funny. Certainly made a big impact culturally. I'm sure a lot of big girls are pigging out today in in honor of it. They're probably dancing on his grave, causing an earthquake. But yeah, Kevin Samuels, he was definitely he definitely dropped the tough truths. I personally didn't like his style from a coaching standpoint. I think sometimes he was, straight up cruel to people. I think enjoyed he enjoyed messing with people too much. But the flip side is that I think a lot of people are snowflakes and needed it. He certainly was a force. So R.I.P. Oh man, it would take me forever to go through all these artifacts. They're mostly Greco-Roman stuff, but we do have things from the Reformation. Um, yeah, hell of a spot. That's for sure. Heart attack at 56, man. Well, so back to this question about the guy hustling here and his wife pulling back. I'm happy. I'm really happy you wrote in, man. This is you're intense in the right place. You're trying to move things forward. I understand why you're frustrated, but with respect, you're just a little bit too red pill right now, and there's a lot of assumptions here that she, you're just gonna you pull back. She's an anxious girl, and you pull back all this comfort to to work, and you basically withdraw affection from her, and I think you're expecting her to want you more, but this is a classic red pill mistake because the red pill doesn't understand comfort. When you don't have enough comfort, you get drama, which is exactly what you're getting. So I understand that you're probably doing what you're doing because it needs to be done, but you're you're not really leading her. You're just kind of telling her, this is what I'm doing, and if you don't like it, I don't know the full context of the relationship, but the big point here is I think you need to communicate a little bit more clear with her about what you're doing. Hey, look, I love you, but I gotta do this stuff. Like, are you hurt? What's going on? You know, call her out and say you don't say I love you anymore. What's been going on, rather than just pull back defensively. You got to lead more. You got to get to the heart of the emotional issue. If you call her out for why she doesn't say I love you, she's gonna say something like, "Well, you don't love me, so why should I say it?" And you're gonna be like, "What do you mean I don't love you?" It's like, "Well, you don't come to this stuff anymore." And then you can say, "Well, look, this is why I'm not going to this stuff," and you can work it out. It may be that there are certain things that you not going to are really very important to her, and by not doing it, you're just damaging the connection between you. Guys need to understand this whole I'm alpha boss, I do what I want. It's not that's not the problem with most relationships. Most relationships have a problem of connection, which is really more comfort, right? They're not connected. The thing is the desire was built in. She got with you because she desired you. It's not as flashy down the line, but the desire is still there. What she's missing is that she's feeling disconnected. So you want to try to focus on deepening the connection. That's my perspective. From her behavior, she obviously is attracted to you. She's obviously it's just a comfort issue. It's not a desire issue. So oh man, the needlecraft. Yeah. R.I.P. to your dad, brother. R.I.P. That's I'm sorry to hear that, but I know that was a long that was a long slog. We're not gonna explain what it means. We're not gonna explain what it means because we're on YouTube. Just think of some stuff with needles that have been common recently. All right. So, next question. Just watched your video about borderline personality disorder and femininity. Do you think antisocial personality disorder could be the masculine side of this coin? Um, I I don't, to be honest, know enough about the details of antisocial personality disorder. Um, but I definitely think that there's something to what you're saying there. I know that antisocial personality disorder, that it's kind of like sociopathy. Um, and so I do think that there's an element of it. It's much more of like a colder, calculating indifference to people's feelings. I think it's a good inference. I think it's a good inference. You could say it's masculine, masculinity weaponized versus borderline, which I said femininity was weaponized. And if you guys remember from that video, which I don't know who found it or how it blew up, but that was the line that pissed him off the most when I said that borderline personality disorder is weaponized femininity. They hated that one. Oh my god, they hated it so much. That was hilarious. Check those comments if you haven't checked it out. My video on Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, absolutely hilarious. All right, last question, and then I'm gonna rest my voice. Hey man, got a question for you. Started talking to a girl, very pretty, very sweet. She has some moles on her face that are distracting. How do you approach a woman when you want to make a modification to them without them being offended? Do you just let it be or do you try to bring it up? Oh man, this is a this is a tough one. Uh, I okay. I don't A lot of this is going to depend on the dynamic between you and her and how open you are in general with her, with things, how much you tell her what you think about everything. Either way, though, this is something that really has to be addressed delicately. First off, I'm sure that they are, but just to make sure, is it relatively easy for her to get rid of those moles? Like, is it relatively easy for her to get rid of them? Is this just a very simple procedure and they're gonna be able to disappear? If so, then the way I would broach it is, is there any part of yourself that you don't like? You would mention maybe one a feature of yours that you don't like, right? Oh, I don't like the way my hands look, or I have this mark here and I don't like it. And then you can say, what about you? Is there anything you don't like? And then she might bring it up herself. She might say, oh well, I just really don't like these moles. You say, oh well, can you get rid of them? Like, is there a way that you can get rid of them? Um, I think there's a surgery that will get rid of them, blah blah. That's that's basically how I would approach it. I think if you just go right at it and say, "Oh, these moles, like we should probably get rid of them. Um, let's I'm gonna get you surgery to get rid of those moles." You're gonna probably like crush her, and I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. If you're gonna commit to her, you're gonna have to commit to her in spite of the moles. If you kind of do it conditionally, you're setting yourself up for a really bad dynamic. So that's the way I would do it. I would lead in about something that you don't like about how you look, and then you just say, "Is there anything that you don't like?" If they really are obviously her worst feature, she'll probably bring it up. And then you say, "Have you ever considered getting them removed?" I know they can get rid of those things really easily these days. And then she'll be like, maybe, "Oh, yeah, but," or, "No, I hadn't thought about it. I didn't know about that." And that's how you kinda open the door to it. Alright, we got a question here in the chat, Seth. "Hey, man, what's the best step when your woman is still kind, sex present, etcetera, but you know you haven't been showing up and she's called it out?" Yeah, that I'm gonna just go with what, SW is saying here. Just open your heart. Um, just tell her how you feel. Yeah, tell her how you feel. I mean, she seems like she's open the holding space for that. Alright, guys. That's enough for now. Hope this laryngitis will get better. It's a slog, that's for sure. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. Enjoy your weekends. I'll see you soon.